Nobody talks about this. The real story behind Harlem's most feared and respected kingpin isn't just about drugs, power, or crime. It's about control, loyalty, betrayal, and a man who built an empire in the shadows while standing face to face with some of the most dangerous figures in American history. Ellsworth, Bumpy Johnson, wasn't just another street hustler. He was a strategist, a thinker, a man who turned the streets of Harlem into his kingdom during a time when power was everything, and losing it meant death. But here's where it gets deeper. Bumpy's rise wasn't smooth. It was built on violence, discipline, and a sharp mind that set him apart from everyone else around him. Born in 1905 in Charleston, South Carolina, Ellsworth Johnson got his nickname Bumpy from a noticeable bump on the back of his head. As a kid, he wasn't raised in luxury. His early life was marked by fear and tension. His older brother was accused of killing a white man, forcing him to flee town to avoid lynching. That moment changed everything. It showed Bumpy what power looked like in America and what happened when you didn't have it. So his family sent him to Harlem, New York, hoping he'd find a better life. Instead, he found something else: opportunity in chaos. Harlem in the 1920s and 1930s was alive with music, culture, and nightlife. But beneath that beauty was a dangerous underworld. Gambling, rackets, drugs, and organized crime controlled everything. And if you were smart enough, ruthless enough, and disciplined enough, you could rise. Bumpy Johnson did exactly that. He started small, running errands, and doing low-level work for local criminals. But what separated him from others was his mindset. While others chased quick money, Bumpy studied people. He learned how power moved. He read books on philosophy, literature, even while involved in crime. He wasn't just building muscle, he was building intelligence. And eventually, that got him noticed. His big break came when he aligned himself with Stephanie St. Clair, known as the Queen of Harlem's numbers racket. She ran one of the most powerful illegal lottery operations in the city. At a time when most men underestimated women in power, Bumpy didn't. He respected her intelligence and saw her vision. She saw something in him too. Bumpy became her enforcer, the man who protected her empire. And this wasn't just about muscle, this was war. Because there was another force trying to take over Harlem, the Italian Mafia. Led by powerful figures like Dutch Schultz, the mob wanted control of Harlem's lucrative numbers game. They didn't care who they had to eliminate to get it, and that's where the conflict exploded. This wasn't a small street fight. This was a full-scale battle for control, money, territory, and respect. Violence became the language of power. Shootings, assassinations, intimidation, it was constant. Bumpy wasn't just defending territory, he was defending Harlem itself from outside control. And people noticed. To many in Harlem, Bumpy wasn't just a criminal, he was a protector. A man who stood up to forces that tried to take advantage of their community. But power always comes with pressure, and pressure leads to betrayal. As the war intensified, alliances began to shift. The streets don't reward loyalty, they test it. People flipped, informants whispered, enemies got closer. And then came the twist nobody expected. Instead of continuing the war to the death, Bumpy made a strategic move that shocked everyone. He made peace with the Mafia. Specifically, he aligned himself with Lucky Luciano, one of the most powerful mob bosses in America. Now think about that. The same Mafia he was fighting, he partnered with. Why? Because Bumpy understood something most people didn't. Real power isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing when to stop. Through this alliance, Bumpy didn't lose control. He secured it. He became the Mafia's representative in Harlem. That meant he ran operations, controlled the streets, and ensured profits flowed while still maintaining respect in his community. It was a dangerous balance. On one side, he had to answer to the Mafia. On the other, he had to maintain his reputation in Harlem. One wrong move, and both sides could turn on him. And that fear, it was real. Bumpy lived under constant pressure. Every deal, every decision, every alliance could be his last. The streets he controlled were the same streets that could take him out. But despite that, he carried himself with a level of calm that made people respect and fear him even more. He wasn't loud. He didn't need to be. His presence spoke for itself. There are stories of Bumpy walking into rooms and conversations going silent. Not because people were told to be quiet, but because they knew who he was. Power like that doesn't come from noise. It comes from reputation. But even the strongest reputations can't outrun consequences. Bumpy Johnson spent years in and out of prison. His criminal life caught up with him multiple times. Long sentences, harsh conditions, time that could break most men. But not him. Even behind bars, Bumpy remained disciplined. He read constantly, studied, reflected. He didn't waste time. He used it. And when he came out, he stepped right back into power. That's rare. Most people lose everything when they go inside. Bumpy came out and reclaimed his position like he never left. That tells you something about his influence. But here's where the emotional side hits. Despite his criminal empire, many people in Harlem respected Bumpy deeply. Some even loved him. Why? Because he gave back. He helped people financially, looked out for families, supported local businesses. In a system where many felt ignored or oppressed, Bumpy became a figure who provided support, no matter where the money came from. That creates a complicated legacy. Was he a criminal? Yes. Was he a community figure? Also yes. And that's what makes this story powerful. It's not black and white. It's layered. Now let's talk about the fear. Because make no mistake, Bumpy Johnson was feared. Not just by rivals, but by anyone who understood what he was capable of. He wasn't reckless. He was calculated. And that's more dangerous. A reckless man might make mistakes. A calculated man makes decisions. And those decisions often came with consequences for others. Still, there was a code. Bumpy believed in loyalty, respect, structure. Break those and there was a price. And people knew it. But even with all that power, all that respect, all that fear, Bumpy Johnson was still human. And in 1968, his story came to an end in a way nobody expected. Not in a shootout, not in a gang war, but quietly. He died of a heart attack while sitting in a restaurant in Harlem, just like that. No dramatic ending, no final showdown. The man who survived wars, prison, and betrayal, gone in a moment of silence. That's the part nobody talks about. Sometimes the most powerful figures don't fall in chaos. They just stop. And what's left behind is the story, the legacy, the questions. Was Bumpy Johnson a hero to Harlem or a criminal who thrived in its struggles? Was his alliance with the mafia a betrayal or a smart move that protected his power? There's no simple answer. But one thing is clear. He was one of the most influential figures to ever come out of New York's underworld. His story isn't just about crime. It's about power, survival, and understanding how the game is really played. And if you look closely, you'll realize something. Bumpy Johnson didn't just play the game. He mastered it. But even after his death, the story didn't end. Because power like Bumpy Johnson's doesn't just disappear, it echoes. After he passed in 1968, Harlem didn't suddenly become quiet. The streets didn't clean themselves up. Instead, a new wave of players stepped in, trying to fill the space he left behind. But here's the truth. Nobody could replace him. That kind of influence doesn't come around twice. One of the most well-known figures connected to Bumpy's legacy was a young man named Frank Lucas. Before he became one of the most infamous drug traffickers in American history, Lucas was learning directly under Bumpy, watching him, studying him, absorbing how he moved, how he spoke, and how he handled power. And that's the twist a lot of people miss. Bumpy didn't just build an empire. He passed down a blueprint that would later shape the next generation of crime in Harlem. But here's where things take a darker turn. While Bumpy believed in structure, loyalty, and controlled power, the generation that came after him didn't always follow those same rules. The streets became more chaotic, more violent, less disciplined. The code started to fade. And when the code disappears, so does control. That's when things spiral. What Bumpy had managed with strategy and patience slowly turned into something more unpredictable. The balance he maintained between the community and organized crime began to break apart, which raises a real question. Was Bumpy Johnson the problem, or was he the one holding something worse back? Because sometimes the presence of a powerful figure keeps chaos in check. And when that figure is gone, the system collapses under its own weight. That's not something people like to admit, but history shows it again and again. And that's why Bumpy's story still matters today. Not because of the drugs, not because of the violence, but because of the lessons. Power isn't just about strength, it's about control. Loyalty isn't just about words, it's about actions under pressure. And survival, that's about knowing when to fight and when to make a deal. Bumpy Johnson understood all three. He lived it. And whether people see him as a criminal, a leader, or something in between, one thing is undeniable. He left a mark that time hasn't erased. Even now, decades later, his name still carries weight, still sparks debate, still raises questions about power, race, control, and the reality of life in the streets during one of America's most complex eras. And maybe that's why nobody talks about the full story, because it's uncomfortable. It forces people to look beyond simple labels and face the truth. Some of the most powerful figures in history lived in the gray areas. Not heroes, not villains, but something much harder to define. So when you hear the name Bumpy Johnson, don't just think about crime. Think about strategy. Think about survival. Think about a man who walked a razor-thin line between respect and fear and managed to stay standing longer than most ever could. And if that doesn't make you stop and think, nothing will. If you made it this far, make sure you hit that like button. Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. Was Bumpy Johnson a protector of Harlem, or just another kingpin who played the game too well? And don't forget, watch the video below for more true crime stories just like this.